This is HBR News number 515. Save us from the banking tyranny and trolling the WNBA. We discuss the news of the week and give it the Badger treatment. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Honey Badger Radio. Because I hope you guys are doing well this week and that you're laughing at all of this absurdity so that you are not consumed by it. I'm your host, Brian, and I am joined by, as always, my lovely co-hosts, Hannah Wallen and Dr. Ranmercam. On today's HBR News Week, we're going to be discussing some of the latest happenings, and there's a lot to talk about, but I had to narrow it down to just a few so that this show doesn't go on for hours and hours. But we're going to talk about subpoenas for the Clintons. Debanking has been debunked, adding some color, specifically I think it's like pink or green, to the WNBA and more. So stick around, it's going to be a good time. And be sure to join us afterwards for the patron-only after show, where we're going to be looking at this article from HBR.com, which, by the way, they've done this sort of thing before. This isn't a new thing, but sometimes they have to revisit the classics. So they just made an updated version of an old listicle called How the Lord of the Rings Movies Have Aged Poorly, where they basically
because there's not enough women in it. It's because there's not enough women in it, right? There's only two main female characters, and one of them had to be bulked out in order to fill the DEI female quota. Is that what it is? That's what it is, isn't it?
Well, I don't want to spoil it, but considering the content of the channel that we do here, I don't think that's too far off the mark. But if you want to join us for that, you have to become a Badger yourself by going to feedthebadger.com and starting a monthly subscription. $5 a month will get you into our Discord, where you'll be able to watch all of the additional content, like these patron shows, as well as works in progress, and hang out with all of the lovely people that are in the Discord. And you'll be able to coordinate things like the meetups that we have coming up. So this coming Saturday, actually, I'll let Hannah tell you about it, but we have a meetup coming up this Saturday in Ohio if you want to be there. I'm going to be there with Lindsay, and Hannah will be there, and maybe more people will be there. But Hannah, go ahead and tell them a little bit about it.
So the meetup is going to be at Round 1 in the Fairfield Mall in Beaver Creek, Ohio. And we will be starting there. We'll be arriving there at about 4 o'clock p.m., so it'll start at about 4 o'clock p.m. and it'll go until either all of us get wiped out and leave, or 2 a.m. I think is when the venue closes. Just be aware that the mall closes earlier than that, so you'd have to leave through Round 1's outer door and not back through the mall. So you want to park near Round 1 and not someplace else to get close to the door. Yeah, it's going to be a good time. They have good food. They have video games. There are hotels all over the place around the area, because there's Wright State University right there, and there's also all kinds of great restaurants around the area if you don't want to eat at Round 1, or if you want to eat before you come in and stuff. And then there's also some sort of anime cafe. We didn't get to go inside and take a look, but we saw from the outside, and we looked at their menu and stuff online. It's kind of interesting looking upstairs as well. But that's basically what we're going to be doing, and it is not limited to any group of people. We have friends from Gamergate, we have friends from the men's rights movement, we have some friends on the left, we have some friends on the right. Doesn't matter, just show up and have a good time. And see some of the Badgers.
So go check that out. Go to feedthebadger.com. I think there's some more information there, and hopefully we'll see you guys there. And if you want to reach out personally, you don't really like talking to websites, I know I don't, just join the Discord. You can go into the free version of it by going to badgernation.online, and you can just jump into the Discord and talk to the folks about what's going on. We also have another meetup coming up in September. This one will be in Calgary, Alberta. So a little bit further out for me, but I will do my best to be at that one as well. It's going to be like a little mini convention. We'll have some
Yep.
talks and stuff. So not quite as like cash as the one in Ohio, but there'll definitely be like fun times to be had there. And that will be with Allison and Jonathan and me and Lindsay and whoever else can make it. So please consider joining us for all of that. And if you don't want to wake up one morning and find that we've been yeeted from the internet, finally, then go to badgerfeed.com or honeybadgerradio.com to find all of our archived content. All right. So before we get into it, I just got a super chow. I feel like I should read it out now from Meredith G, who gives us $5 and says, HBR News number 515, honey for the Badgers. Thank you, Meredith. Really appreciate it. Every little bit helps, whatever you guys want to give, especially if you have something to say. I'd appreciate if you just sent it to us because we usually have a lot to say here, and so we don't get a chance to respond to the chat as much. But if you send us a super chat, a super chow, or a rumble rant, we'll be sure to give you all the priority. And whenever like Twitter gets something like that going, we'll use that too, because I know we got people watching us on X. Okay, but anyway, with all of that out of the way, let us get into today's stories. Okay. On August 5th, 2025, the House Oversight Committee, chaired by Representative James Comer, issued subpoenas to a range of high-profile figures, including former President Bill Clinton, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, former Attorneys General Merrick Garland, William Barr, Jeff Sessions, Loretta Lynch, Eric Holder, and Alberto Gonzalez, as well as former FBI Directors James Comey and Robert Mueller, as part of a probe into Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking case. The committee also subpoenaed the Justice Department for unredacted Epstein files due by August 19th, 2025, that's in like 7 days, and set deposition dates for the officials from August to October, with Bill Clinton scheduled for October 14th and Hillary Clinton for October 9th. This action follows a bipartisan vote on July 23, 2025, by the Federal Law Enforcement Subcommittee, driven by Representative Scott Perry and supported by Representative Summer Lee, to compel testimony and records to scrutinize the federal government's handling of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell's cases amid concerns over potential mishandling or leniency, such as the controversial 2008 non-prosecution agreement negotiated by then U.S. Attorney Alex Acosta. The investigation has reignited public and political interest due to Epstein's connections to powerful individuals and persistent conspiracy theories surrounding his 2019 death, officially ruled a suicide. I have to say that because that's what they said, and the lack of confirmed client list of abusers, as noted in a July 2025 Justice Department memo. The probe also targets Ghislaine Maxwell, Epstein's associate, who is serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking, though her deposition was delayed pending a Supreme Court review of her conviction. Despite bipartisan support, the subpoenas have sparked controversy, with some questioning whether they are going to be a genuine push for transparency or a politically motivated spectacle, especially given former presidents rarely testify under compulsion. House Speaker Mike Johnson has expressed reservations, arguing the Trump administration needs space to act, while public sentiment on platforms like X reflect the skepticism about the subpoena's effectiveness, with some users calling them smoke and mirrors. The investigation aims to inform legislative reforms on sex trafficking laws and make them illegal. What are you talking about, reform? And non-prosecution agreements, but its outcome remains uncertain as it navigates legal, political, and public pressures.
All right, I might as well rip this Band-Aid off as swiftly as possible. Nothing is going to happen, ladies and gentlemen. Nothing. Sorry if that's blackpilling anyone, but it's important to be realistic. I'm not saying nothing ever happens. That's a meme that has appeared among, funnily enough, news commentators, people whose job it is to rigorously catalogue all the things that are happening. They'll spend every weekday compiling evidence of all the things that have happened, and then they'll jestingly quip that nothing ever happens. What they mean is nothing good ever happens. Innocent people get arrested all the time, but massively guilty people in royalty and in the government never get arrested. That's why they do this shit, because they know they'll never be arrested no matter what. It's not that nothing ever happens. There's plenty of news. It's just that it's all bad news. As they say, no news is good news. Fucking the UK government recently banned people from criticizing the UK government, and the rest of the world is following suit. They're not even outraged. They're just following suit. Just like world governments looked at the Chinese model, and instead of going, this is totalitarian, let's make sure we never do this. No, they licked their lips and went, oh, hell yes. We all need social credit scores and complete control over the lives and beliefs of our citizens. And what little pushback there is being completely ignored. So don't tell me nothing ever happens. Huge things are happening every day that plunge the Western world further and further into the Big Brother future. It's just that nothing ever happens to prevent it. Perhaps this is a rhetorical exaggeration. I certainly hope so. But where it's not an exaggeration is when it comes to the Clintons and other such tyrannical murderers. If anyone is sitting on a nest of hopes that any of these people are going to face justice before they die, I'm terribly sorry to have to disappoint you. That is not how the world works. I mean, decades after they die, we might become privy to the information that would have and should have seen them in solitary confinement until their dying day, but not a moment before that. Royalty does not get arrested unless there is a violent revolution. And you probably don't want one of those because it will mostly result in the deaths of the innocent in their millions. How many innocent people have to die to justify the Clintons getting arrested? That's an interesting question, come to think of it. I'm going to say 10 people, just to start us off. If 10 people have to die to get the Clintons in prison, it will have been worth it. It took fewer than that to kill Osama bin Laden, allegedly. It ought to be a trivial affair when it comes to the Clintons. This is what the FBI is for. This is what the CIA is for. You send a squad to their house, you storm the place, and you only need one bullet for Bill Clinton and one wood chipper for Hillary. I just want to see the look on her face as she's emptied into the wood chipper. That's my thing. That would be a thing happening. That would finally be a good thing happening. But like I said, the chances of it happening are in the single digits. So don't rest your laurels on it, folks. Just try to build a future where the Clintons of the future can't happen anymore, where criminals can't just ransack their way through the country with impunity. It's a pipe dream, I know, but it's pretty basic bitch when you strip it all down. It is, at the very least, the least we can do. I think. Maybe.
All right,
Yeah,
Hannah.
it's gonna be one of those situations where you have a little hope, but you never hold your breath because it's the government prosecuting the government, and the government never finds itself guilty, even when it's a different administration. And we can hope that with Trump in office and Trump wanting vengeance for the whole Russia conspiracy and all that, that he is going to be different. And you can always hope that this particular politician is going to be different. And there's been evidence that he's going to be different, because there's been other instances where he has been different. Especially in terms of keeping promises about shrinking the government in various ways. But at the same time, there's been some hesitance to come out and provide the information that he promised about the Epstein files. However, there has been something interesting that came out since I posted this in our internal chat about the news show, or at least something that I didn't find until later. and that is that there was more confirmation that Jeffrey Epstein was an FBI informant. This was published by Radar Online, but the news paper that I found it in was the Economic Times, and their link to Radar Online just goes to Radar Online's front page. It doesn't go to the Epstein story. So I'm going to read a little bit of this, but it just says, according to an internal FBI cable dated September 9, 2008, special agents. This was by the way obtained by a Freedom of Information Act lawsuit by Radar Online. So this was definitely from a government source. Special agents noted that Epstein was actively providing information to the FBI as agreed upon, and that no federal prosecution would proceed as long as he complied with the agreement made in the state of Florida. So that explains why that agreement happened, right? They didn't prosecute him because he was actively providing them with information. We don't know exactly what kind of information. Probably financial. He was probably getting financial information on people that he lured to his island with, the other activities that he had going on there that we can't really describe that much on YouTube without getting the banhammer. The cable was marked routine, and it strongly suggested Epstein was cooperating with federal authorities before the plea deal. And then, of course, afterwards, when all this outrage happened and he got prosecuted and he got killed, that kind of violated whatever deal he made with the FBI. A source close to the investigation described these files to Radar Online as smoking gun documents, proving Epstein's status as an FBI source well before the plea deal. The revelation challenges the narrative that Epstein's leniency was solely due to powerful lawyers or elite social connections. So that's an important bit of information for a couple of reasons. First of all, it shows that the FBI was, at least during the Obama administration, and probably prior to that as well, they were okay with using somebody who was committing heinous crimes against children as an informant and allowing him to continue to remain free to commit heinous crimes against children. Like that, they were okay with that as long as they got what they wanted out of it. That's the first thing. That's really sick, right? But the other thing is, this narrative that you can get away with heinous crimes against children just because you're rich and powerful, and just because you're a man. That kind of kills that, because clearly he had to be an informant and gather dirt on his customers for the FBI in order to have that freedom, right? Not just be rich and male, right? The magic penis didn't keep him out of jail, feminists. Sorry to bust your bubble. And so that's a rather important thing. Now, with regard to the Clintons, they've been Teflon for so long that I think we all have a bit of Clinton fatigue. Where we hear they did something again, right? We hear some new thing about, there's evidence against the Clintons in this area. There's evidence against the Clintons in this area. Well, they're going to get away with it because it's the Clintons and they get away with everything. But I think that started with the fact of all the sexual allegations against Bill Clinton. And when you break most of those down, there's only one of them that really has very much credibility, because there are actual medical records for the accuser who was injured. And so it is possible that one was true. But the majority of the allegations of sexual misconduct against Bill Clinton when he was president were either demonstrably bogus or really not that important. And with that being the thing that they got away with first, It kind of set the stage for people to think, oh, they get away with everything, when really that wasn't that big of a deal. Hillary gets away with a lot of stuff. And there was evidence of a lot of corruption in her office and her actions and her history as a lawyer. But we really can't be sure of any of that either, because there was never any follow-up. And the DC smear machine that goes after politicians, may have exaggerated everything. But this, they may not be able to get out of. If this started with the Clinton administration and not the Obama administration, that's something that maybe they might hang for. Using an individual who is known to be a predator of children, and keeping him out in the world doing what he does, just so that they can get information on people he can lure to this private island to do horrible things. That's pretty awful, right? There's got to be other ways to get blackmail material on your political enemies. The guy was a financier, right? They could have gotten it that way. But no, they had to allow this to happen. So even if, it comes out that the reason that Bill Clinton went to Epstein Island so many times was to keep up with that information and obtain that information, that's just as bad as if he went there as a customer. That's just as bad, because he knew it was happening, and he was in the most powerful position in the world, and he didn't do jack shit about it. He cooperated, right? He allowed his FBI to cooperate, and Obama didn't stop it. He could have stopped it, and he didn't stop it. And then, of course, they kept Trump out of office for a second term because they didn't want him finding out. So, yeah. This is a heck of a bomb drop. Hopefully it lands on the target and not, out in the weeds somewhere where nothing will happen.
Yeah, mainly I covered it because we have been, we were basically one of the earliest to report when the arrest happened of Jeffrey Epstein, and then the suicide that followed. We reported it, so I see this as an ongoing story that I will only really, because like some people, they report on every little thing that happens, and I don't do that because first of all, it's very clickbaity, and I think it's like kind of empty, because you end up having, because you need to cover every little thing that happens, you end up landing in a bunch of like speculation land, like, oh, so and so said this, but they said it like this, or why was he wearing a green shirt that day, or whatever it is. So I'd rather like wait until something kind of concrete happens. And so I saw the thing about the FBI, but I didn't want, I figured we could just lump them together. But this is like the real thing that on paper, subpoenas have been issued. We're going to see what happens in 7 days. They're supposed to release some documents, and we'll cover it on the news show just because I started it. I started it like just like anything else, when the Derek Chauvin, George Floyd thing happened, I was one of the first people to report on it once the body cam footage came out. Like, this was like, I don't know, a week or so after the incident itself happened. And if something else comes out that follows up on that story, like something happens with Derek Chauvin or something, I'm gonna report it because I already started it, so I got to keep following through. If something breaks with Bill Cosby, I'm gonna follow it. If something breaks with Harvey Weinstein, there are some things with Harvey Weinstein that appear to be coming out, but I didn't think it was quite enough meat on that bone for a news story. So with this, I'm not really like getting excited or depressed about it. I'm just following it to see where it goes, and that's it. Like, whatever the truth is whatever the truth is. We're just, hopefully we'll be able to endure whatever happens. But this is what happened. I'm following up, so we will see. I mean, we're probably not going to hear anything about this until October, which is when I think Hillary Clinton is supposed to testify. So this is the way the courts work. We've been through the courts ourselves. This is usually like a slow process, lots of red tape, lots of bureaucracy. That's just the way it goes. You know, this is like unfortunate but true. So anyway, we'll follow back on it when we hear more. And that's all I can say about that. So anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments. We're gonna move on to the next story, because I didn't get any super chats or super chows. So, but send some of those in, guys, if you have any questions. You know, give us some thoughts. All right. In a related news, and I think this is actually a really good story to cover as well, in light of everything that's happened in the past few years in America, Canada, and other parts of the world. On August 7th, 2025, President Donald Trump signed Executive Order 14331 titled Guaranteeing Fair Banking for All Americans, aimed at combating politicized or unlawful debanking. Defined as the denial or restriction of financial services based on a customer's political or religious beliefs or lawful business activities disfavored for political reasons. The order addresses past practices such as Operation Choke Point and post-January 6, 2021 surveillance programs where financial institutions allegedly targeted individuals and businesses, particularly conservatives, religious groups, and industries like firearms, energy, and digital assets, for their beliefs or affiliations. It mandates that banking decisions be based on individualized, objective, and risk-based analyses, prohibiting discrimination under laws like the Equal Credit Opportunity Act, and seeks to restore public trust by ensuring fair access to financial services for all Americans. The executive order imposes specific actions on federal banking regulators, including the Federal Reserve, FDIC, OCC, NCUA, CFPB, and SBA within set timelines. Within 180 days, regulators must remove reputation risk and similar concepts from their supervisory materials that could enable debanking, and within 120 days, they must review financial institutions for past or current policies that promote such practices, with potential penalties like fines or consent decrees for violations. The SBA is directed to notify lenders within 60 days to identify and reinstate clients previously debanked unlawfully under its programs, while the Treasury Secretary must develop a comprehensive anti-debanking strategy within 180 days, potentially including legislative proposals. These measures build on prior efforts like the DOJ/Virginia Equal Access to Banking Task Force and proposed laws such as the Fair Access to Banking Act, reflecting a broader push to eliminate discriminatory banking practices. So he is, and this, how I learned about this is really interesting, because I was talking a lot about Gamergate. I do a lot of stories on culture and the gaming industry and other creative industries on my channel, Honey Badger Arcade, which you guys can check out on YouTube or Rumble. And this came out because there was a recent kerfuffle on Steam, itch.io, and other sort of, GOG.com, which are all like gaming websites where you can buy games. There's an activist group called Collective Shout, which we have talked about on this channel before. There are a bunch of radical feminists from Australia that are supposedly trying to protect women and girls from sexual objectification by essentially getting games banned. Now, they couldn't get the games banned directly, so instead they did a different tactic by carpet bombing the actual credit card payment processors and demanding that they be the ones that restrict people's ability to buy stuff on Steam, GOG, or itch.io with their own money. And now, of course, they come out of Australia, and Australia doesn't really have the ability to change the Trump's bill or executive order won't affect that. But what I'm hoping for is that it will sort of set a tone so that other people will realize that their basically right to their own property is being threatened by this, and that they should be speaking out. So, and it is like Americans are probably in a better position because of this act in terms of that Gamergate controversy, because that's the way they work. If they can't scold you into submission. Then they'll just take away access to your money. The other thing that this affected were people like Mike Lindell, who you guys might know as the My Pillow guy, who had his business destroyed because he supported Trump. The January 6th people got debanked. So this is like all over. Crypto guys that were like involved with cryptocurrencies were getting debanked because it was going against, I guess, whatever the banks wanted. So this is like a problem that needed to be addressed, unfortunately. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, this is what I was talking about last week that I said needed to happen. And it's people think of this as, oh my gosh, you guys are throwing such a temper tantrum over games. Like, fuck that, right? You know better than that. Nobody who says that is unaware of the huge intrusion that banks have made into people's lives, right? You can't get paid without a bank in most workplaces, most big corporate workplaces in the United States. Not just your workplace getting money out of their bank, but a lot of workplaces, most workplaces now have gone to mandatory direct deposit. You can't get a paycheck. They won't give you a paycheck. And if you don't have a bank account and they can't pay into your bank account, then you have to settle for some very insecure methods of getting paid, like net spend and stuff like that, where if somebody actually gets into the system and gets your information, the minute you get paid, that money can be taken and you don't have a way to get it back. So essentially, you can't go to the grocery store without banks. You can't get gas for your car without banks. You can't do anything without banks. They are that powerful now. And so if they can come along and say, well, if you're Republican and we think that you voted for Donald Trump, you can't have a bank account, right? If you speak out online about the way that your culture is being attacked, you can't have a bank account. Right? If you speak out online about fathers' rights, you can't have a bank account. And it's not just the big banks going directly after individuals. Like they did go after one of the leaders, founding members of the Proud Boys in that manner. Took away his bank, so that he had to scramble to find a place to bank. And there's always credit unions, right? But they have to do business with the big banks too. And there's always payment processors like PayPal, right? Except they have to do business with the big banks too, right? They have to do business through the credit card companies, because most transactions that you make in order to take money out of or put money into your PayPal account go through a bank account. They go through a credit card. And the credit cards are owned by the banks. And so what ended up happening with PayPal, they ended up with this same pressure campaign. They ended up, MasterCard, I think, was the first one to do it to them. Basically said you can't do business with certain groups of people, and you have to ban people based on political affiliations, or we will not do business with you, and you will not be able to get payments through us. Visa's only a step behind MasterCard on that, and they are the two biggest credit card payment processors in the world. Like all the other card companies will follow suit if they do a particular thing over time. And what you end up with in that situation is that you can't buy anything anywhere. Right? You wouldn't be able to buy cryptocurrency. You wouldn't be able to bypass the banks, because you have to use the banks to buy the cryptocurrency to bypass the banks. So if they decided they didn't want you to be able to do that, they could stop you. And so they become a government onto themselves, a world government onto themselves, or unto themselves. And if your country does not want to be overridden by a world banking system that makes its own laws and then imposes them sort of around governments or behind the backs of governments, going directly to businesses and stuff. Then they have to pass laws like this. They can't allow banks to undermine their national processes. And that is essentially what the United States is doing at this point, what the president is doing. He is saying the banks cannot undermine the culture of the United States and the legal processes, the election systems, the civil rights protections, and so on in the United States by going directly to businesses and saying you can't do business with people who are of this political affiliation. But it took gamers to figure out just how bad banks being able to do that was, and have enough of a loud fit about it to get the president's attention. How bad is that? Like everybody else that should have noticed, doctors, lawyers, business owners should have been able to, go to the president and say, "Hey, this is a big deal. We are in real trouble here. We're not going to be able to just do business freely as Americans doing business with American citizens because of this. You better do something about it." No, it was just us, little piddly, individuals that just wanted to have the freedom to have a stupid pastime that nobody should care about in terms of getting upset, right? There's actually quite a bit of value to it. It's very good for your brain as long as you don't overdo it. But yeah, just us. Nobody else seemed to care about this. Nobody else figured out just exactly how dangerous it is to have a world organization that could override every government everywhere, except gamers. Again. So
Gamers recognize the patterns. The best at that.
Next time somebody makes fun of you for still playing video games at whatever age you are, just remember that. All right. If anybody's going to save the world, it's going to be gamers.
And the problem with the debanking is that the debanking is slanted politically. If you debank someone for being, let's say, a black supremacist, a card-carrying proud black supremacist, that's not allowed. You can't do that. That's no reason to debank someone. Why on earth would it be? If you do it, you'll get sued by various black supremacy groups, and you'll be all over the news media for your racist transgression, and you're dead in the water, and so is your company. Whereas if you debank someone for allegedly being a white supremacist, whatever, fuck that gun. It must be true. They deserve it, and the news media doesn't give a shit, and they never report on it. The end. That's the problem in a nutshell, a black and white nutshell. And there are two ways of dealing with it. Trump has gone for the obvious one, authoritarianism on top of authoritarianism. Let's ban people from banning people based on XYZ characteristics, blah, blah, blah. But the second option is the other direction, where you don't ban anyone from banning anyone. Any bank can refuse service to any creed or color they see fit for any reason. You can have a no blacks, no Irish sign right at the front door, and it's fine. That would be an interesting experiment. I'd like to see it happen somewhere, because then someone somewhere could start up a bank and open it to the public with a sign on the door saying no Jews. Now, I'm not saying anything. I'm not ready to say anything. That's what an experiment is. It's an undergoing to examine what there is to be said. And I would like to see an experiment in the free market wherein someone is allowed to open a bank that is available to absolutely everyone except Jews. I just want to see what happens. I just want to see it. I want to write it down in my notes, in my little book of science, and see in what way we can enrich the data based on those results. In
I think
fact,
there's a southern town that's sort of heading in that direction, Mike. So we might see that fulfilled. I don't know if you heard
hopefully
about the all-white town of like 40
we'll,
people,
we'll
but
see. We'll see if they can
yeah,
develop banks. In fact, sod the banks. Why leave it there? What if everyone everywhere was allowed to discriminate? Imagine that. You could just go, what are you, a Zoroastrian? No, get out. This is my property. I make the rules, and I don't have to justify myself. I don't want you filthy Zoroastrians here, so jog on. But no, jog on. But Judaism isn't a religion, it's a race. Jog on, son. I'm not getting into it. I have no obligation to go into it. Now, hippity hoppity, get off my property. You have 15 seconds to comply. Now, the average Western leftist, to them, that sounds like a dystopian nightmare world. But to the average normal person, at every other point in history, everywhere else in the world, that sounds like it's the normal thing. The thing that people do all the time. Why wouldn't they? So I'd just like to see an experiment where we get back to doing the normal thing that normal people do all the time. Let's just see what happens. That's all I'm saying. It's for science, guys. Let's take a peek into the unknown. It'll be fun. It's not going to happen, but it would be fun.
yeah. I mean, freedom of association is like we do it anyway for the most part. We just have to like drive it home that it's okay to like do that.
Well,
But
we'd have to do more than that because in terms of banks, it's not like, you know, a restaurant or a grocery store or gas station or something like that. Anybody can open up one of those businesses, and there's a regulatory process, and there's a you know, there's paperwork and stuff like that, but it's not so overly complicated, and the startup capital isn't so extensive and expensive that you know, it prevents anybody from being able to do it. But you know, the whole idea of, well, if you don't like this, start your own insert type of business here, start your own insert type of processor here, start your own bank. It kind of stops at start your own bank because of the way that governments handle banking already. It's damn near impossible. Even for, it's been done, all right. There is, I guess, a right wing bank, but it's damn near impossible if you do not have a significant amount of networking and pull to start your own bank. And you know, and that's today. Like historically, it wasn't. Historically, there was competition among banks, but over the last 50 years or so, there has been a concerted effort by certain banks buying up other companies, banking companies. In fact, the bank that I'm with now, I'm only with that bank because it bought the company that bought the company that bought the company that bought the bank I started with. Right? That's why I'm
yeah,
with the bank I'm with now. Literally, I never signed up for this bank.
same.
You
Happened to
know,
me too.
and so it's a different story to say, well, just start your own bank. Even a credit union is difficult. Um, so and it does take. You wouldn't be able to have a small group of people that have absolutely no knowledge of banking decide they're going to start their own bank and then wing it, you know, just learn on the fly and not have people involved that already have power, already have money, and already have knowledge of the banking system and the government system, the regulation system around banks. Banks are heavily regulated, like to the degree that it would be like trying to navigate a labyrinth, a 3D labyrinth the size of the planet. Okay, so it says I'm
Oh,
echoing. I'm not sure
yeah,
exactly
I
why,
don't
but
I don't know. I don't see an echo.
uh, this
Um,
is just so important. You guys need to hear it twice.
yeah, there you go.
But
Well,
yeah, the idea of well, you just allow anybody to discriminate, and if it'll all work itself out. It does, as long as there are no monopolies. But there are numerous government facilitated and government controlled, or at least government maintained monopolies, and the big banks are one of them.
yeah, I mean, I think that at this step, I mean, like ideally, we live in a world where freedom of association was king, but like we can't. We're like neck deep in red tape, in bureaucracy, in like decades of people voting in favor of more and more state regulation and overreach and so on. So I think that this is like what we have to do now, because we have to live on planet Earth and deal with the world as it is and not in the way that we wish it was. But I just want to add on top of this, like how this kind of thing has affected people outside of the U.S. I forgot to mention as one of the examples of debanking harm is Canada. When the trucker protests were going on, what did Justin Trudeau, who was prime minister at the time, do? He took away the truckers and anyone who supported them access to their banking, their money, their bank accounts, and froze them, or just debanked them. So this is obviously going to be used in a lopsided way if it exists. I think that there needs to be a conversation about like how do we fix this problem. But this executive order, and again, these things, they're usually like unless they get pushed through by Congress, they're usually like temporary fixes. But it's better than nothing, and at least maybe in the interim we can figure out some longer term solutions so that we don't have to deal with something like this again. And I guess the United States, because we're the only ones that tried to, like, Trump is the only person that did something about it, we'll have to like show the world what it looks like at least. And hopefully Canada and other countries, I think Australia has stuff like this that's happened as well, will follow suit and learn from it. So anyway, let us know what you guys think about this one in the comments, and I'm going to move on to the next story. Okay. You guys probably remember Big Balls. You guys remember Big Balls? He was one of the Doge employees. So we have a story involving him during the early hours and while escorting his significant other to their car, his girlfriend, through the Washington D.C. streets of the Logan Circle area. A young man was accosted by a group of teens after the teens alluded to wanting to steal their car. The young man was beaten and bloodied as the teens attacked him, an attack that only stopped once local law enforcement officials stepped in, causing them to flee. The attacked young man turned out to be none other than Edward Big Balls Corstein, famous former member of Elon Musk's federal Doge program. Which, by the way, I don't think it's a thing anymore. I mean, I think that they're still like moving to cut back on spending, but Doge ended up not taking over like everyone kept fretting about. So Musk described
what they said they were going to do.
They did what they said they were going to do, and then they were done. I know, it's wild.
Yeah.
It's like crazy. Musk described the incident on Twitter/X, stating, quote, "A few days ago, a gang of about a dozen young men tried to assault a woman in her car at night in D.C. An @Doge team member saw what was happening, ran to defend her, and was severely beaten to the point of concussion, but he saved her." End quote. Former friend of Musk turned seeming frenemy, President Donald Trump, was quick to call for stricter prosecution of young criminals in the District of Columbia, that's Washington, D.C., for those of you guys who don't know, stating on his social media platform, Truth Social, quote, "They are not afraid of law enforcement because they know nothing ever happens to them, but it's going to happen now. The law in D.C. must be changed to prosecute these minors as adults and lock them up for a long time, starting at age 14. The most recent victim was beaten mercilessly by local thugs. Washington, D.C. must be safe, clean, and beautiful for all Americans, and importantly, for the world to see. If DC doesn't get its act together, and quickly, we will have no choice but to take federal control of the city and run this city how it should be run and put criminals on notice that they're not going to get away with it anymore, end quote. Which apparently he's doing. As of the last 48 hours, President Trump has deployed National Guard to D.C. as he pledges to begin a crackdown on crime in the area. And I wanted to say one more thing to add on to this because there was a little bit of confusion. Originally, when the story broke, people thought that Big Balls was just randomly intervening on behalf of a woman who had no relation to him and basically got his ass kicked for it. It was his girlfriend. It was a woman that was with him, and these men, these people, they were trying to jack his car. So it wasn't just random white knighterly. He was actually like protecting his girlfriend and his property. And that was what. So this is important context because, because there's a lot of like, is this like Daniel Penny again? Like, no, it's not that. It's not that simple. So I just wanted to explain the background of that. So anyway, there you go.
This is one of those where some of the reactions I saw were kind of bullshit, right? Because they made that mistake. They thought that he intervened on behalf of random people. It wouldn't matter if he had, right? If he had, that's not this guy betraying the brotherhood. And it's not a moral wrong to intervene on behalf of people that are under attack, and you can see what's happening. It's not always a good idea. You can be wrong about who's under attack, like the people who rescued a woman from a purse snatcher only to discover that she was the purse snatcher and she had actually stolen his bag. But at the same time, just because people don't appreciate it doesn't mean that it's a moral wrong for the individual to do it. It's an unwise choice. You're not going to get thanks for it, and you might get in trouble for it, and it's not worth the risk. No guy should be obligated to do it. And if a guy does do it and he gets respect for it, it doesn't mean other guys are obligated to do it. It means that, society should know better than to treat men in such a way that they are afraid to do it. Because clearly they do appreciate it on some level, right? But that wasn't this situation. And I'm going to say right now, I don't agree with Trump on this. I don't think the solution to youth crime is incarceration as a punishment, because kids don't get to the point where they are carjacking at the age of 14 on their own. They don't raise themselves to be that way. They get that way because they have not been raised. They get that way because every adult in their life has failed them. And I think that, as a parent myself, this is on the parents. And if parents had to face repercussions instead of their kids when their kids commit crimes, there would be quite a bit more effort among parents to ensure that their kids are better behaved. And when you see teenagers engaging in these types of crimes, you are probably looking at somebody who was raised without a father, who was allowed to run wild, who has no good role models in their lives. They've attended school systems where the teachers are not allowed to use any kind of effective discipline. And I'm not just talking about, corporal punishment. I'm talking about every time the kid gets a detention, the mom threatens to sue the school. Because I've seen that happen with kids. I went to school with kids whose parents did that. And they ended up just like this. And instead of putting them into a juvenile detention facility where they're going to get raped by the female guards, because that happens quite a bit. I researched and wrote about that. If you want to read about it, it is in the Honey Badger Brigade blog. If you go through my articles, you'll find it. These kids actually need to go through behavioral programs. They need to be just as much removed from the home and maybe just as much institutionalized as they would be if they were incarcerated. But the facility shouldn't be like a jail. It should be much closer to a mental health facility for people who have committed crimes, which isn't very similar at all to a mental health facility for people who asked for help when they needed it. There's a big difference. You're still locked up. You're still treated as a threat. You're still perceived as somebody who has done something wrong. But the attitude toward the individual who is doing these things isn't, you should have known better. It's, we're going to help you do better. When you get out of here, you're not going to do this kind of thing again. You're going to get on with your life and become somebody who works within your community to earn your own living and support yourself and become, a productive citizen, right? That is what needs to happen. And unfortunately, neither the Democrats nor the Republicans cares enough about the children of this country to do that. Instead, both of them talk in different ways about being tough on crime. The Democrats talk about being tough on crime as if it is somehow racist, and the Republicans talk about being tough on crime as if by bringing down the hammer, you solve all of the wrong lessons, all of the bad training, all of the problems that have been dumped on these underage kids. And I'm not saying, oh, they don't know any better. I'm saying they don't know how to be any better because nobody ever taught them. And this isn't going to do it either.
Mike, did you want to say anything?
Yes. On quite another point, it's going to be so funny if World War III has its equivalent of Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the assassination that starts the chain reaction that leads to World War. And that man's name is Big Balls. Is this going to be what the history books will have to break it down to? Like, how did it happen? Well, the Democrats went full communist. They punished the law abiders for the actions of the criminals. And then they flooded the country with criminals. It reached an inevitable boiling point. And then they got big balls. They got what now? Big balls. They took down big balls. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And justice rippled across the country like, wait, what? Is Big Balls a person's name? Yes. A person's real name? No, his real name was Edward Corstein, but everyone calls him Big Balls because, it's so meme-worthy. Why wouldn't you? It's like Typhoid Mary. Nobody remembers her real surname. It's not important. What she did was important. In her case, it was giving typhoid to a shitload of people. But what Big Balls did was, well, he called himself Big Balls. He worked for Doge, yes, but loads of people work for Doge. What this guy did was call himself Big Balls. And then he turned himself into a pickle. Funniest shit I've ever seen. I see. And is this why the infamous leader of the East Asian Rebellion of 2045 was called 420 Blaze It XX69XX? Yes! Yes, welcome to history in the 21st century. It was an interesting time to be alive. And it is, ladies and gentlemen. For that we can be thankful, even though it's hideous and terrifying and sad and rather foul smelling. I mean, at least we've got stuff to talk about. Week in, week out, all day, every day, there's something somewhere to be talked about. Isn't it wonderful? I know our civilization is crumbling before our very eyes, and there's nothing we can do about it, but at least we get to talk about it. At least we get to fiddle while Rome burns. At least we get to play our string quartet on the dying ashes of the Titanic. Hello, future historians. If you ever hear this, it wasn't that bad. I mean, it was that bad, but whatever. It wasn't. I I can't seem to make a decision. And perhaps that was the problem all along. Dr. Randall McCammon News Honey Badger Radio.
Well, yeah, I mean, just again, I don't think that you can legislate mothers letting fathers, but I mean, you can like change the laws so that you can, basically like put
you can't legislate mothers having fathers in the home, but you can penalize parents for their kids' crimes. They've done it in the past. They do it with delinquency.
Mm-hmm.
They do it not delinquency but truancy. If your child doesn't go to the school, and the schools worked very hard to maintain that because they don't get money from the federal government for students that don't attend.
Right.
Right.
Well, I get all that, but I'm saying even if they change all that now, those kids, or I mean, we're not even really sure. We know they're teens. That doesn't necessarily mean they're like under 18. They could be like close to or
the age that was stated was 14. Right.
Okay.
So
how many of them?
We don't know. Yeah. But when they're talking about trying minors as adults, they're not talking about 18-year-olds. 18-year-olds are already tried as adults. So they're talking about kids who are under the age of 18 and trying them as adults. And the reason we try them as minors, the reason we try minors differently than we try adults is the same reason why minors can't consent to sex, why minors can't sign a contract without parental permission, is because their brains are not developed enough to make decisions as effectively as adults. And either we recognize that and we are consistent on it, and we recognize that an individual who is 14 years old does not have the same process by which they make the decision to commit a crime. There are steps missing because they don't have that full brain development, or they do have the same. Either we accept that or we don't. And either we start allowing them to drive and buy alcohol and sign up for the military and sign contracts and all that, or we recognize that under the age of 18, there are things that we can do to assist. There's a level of plasticity in the brain at that age that we can use to help that individual straighten their shit out, even though their parents didn't, and their educators didn't, and the elders in their neighborhood didn't. Or we start treating them all the way as adults.
Right.
Period.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I'm just saying that like what has happened in this specific case has happened. Like I think that's got to be like a bit of a longer game. That's all I'm saying. Like you can't just fix that. But like right now there's and I think that I don't think he's talking
about legislation to charge young people as adults. And he's not talking about legislation to change the system to prevent recidivism in young people. Right? He's just talking about charging. So what he's going to do is take them from the JDC system and put them in the adult jail system. If he does that, it is absolutely wrong. It's not going to help them. It's not going to help the community. It is going to increase recidivism.
Okay, well, yeah. That I mean, I see what you're saying. I think that it's probably to deter, because the thing is, Washington D.C. historically is very like soft on crime, and I think that it's sort of encouraged this. And he's saying we're gonna invert that, right? And I hope it doesn't. What I hope is that it will create a chilling effect where people are like, well, I guess we can't break laws anymore, so let's try not to do that, But yeah, I mean, I think that ultimately there's got to be a social and cultural change, but I don't think you can simply legislate this away. And that's kind of like we're kind of on the same page with that. And I did get a super chat from Zeranx, who gave us $5 and said, legislate fathers in the homes by getting government out of marriage, family, and children. The hardest thing to do is probably the very thing to try. Yeah, so, I mean, again, you can't just, like, executive order that into play, and it's going to get a lot of pushback, and it probably won't get a lot of support from either party. So they'll have to like do this another way, but I agree that should be the goal in the long run. So, but all right, let us know what you guys think about that one in the comments. Let me see if there's any other super chats, super chows. No Rumble stuff. All right. So we got one more story. We're gonna end on something a little bit hornier, I guess, depending on how you look at it. So, since July 2025, I didn't know there was some multiple instances, but there have been at least six incidents that have disrupted WNBA games where spectators threw neon green and purple dildos onto the court, starting with a game between the Atlanta Dream and the Golden State Valkyries. These acts, initially linked to a cryptocurrency meme coin group promoting green dildo coin, yes, that's what it is, has led to arrests, including a 23-year-old in Atlanta and an 18-year-old in Phoenix charged with disorderly conduct and related offenses. Players like Sophie Cunningham and coaches like Cheryl Reeve have condemned the trend as dangerous and disrespectful, citing risks to player safety and ongoing sexism in women's sports. The WNBA has responded with strict measures, including immediate ejections. I almost read that as erections. The minimum 1-year bans and potential felony charges for offenders while enhancing arena security to curb further disruptions. And I just want to make a suggestion, a piece of advice to the guys trying to push their cryptocurrency meme coin. I wouldn't go to the WNBA because no one's going to see it. So maybe go to a bigger game, maybe the actual NBA. But anyway, I thought it was funny. And the funny thing too is that this came like shortly after a different story that I skipped on where a bunch of like WNBA players started wearing t-shirts that basically said that they deserve to get paid the same as the male players. I forget. I think it was like pay her fair or something like that. I don't really remember. So, yeah, I mean, look, I will say, though, it is probably dangerous to throw things on the court while people are running back and forth. So I'm not like, I think that is seriously a risk. And I'm not in support of that. That being said, this is funny. So anyway, go let you guys have any thoughts on this. Go ahead.
I would have thought, and I'm not a fan of sports, never mind female sports, but I would have thought that it's already an ejectable offence to throw objects onto the court, especially objects that represent trip hazards. I don't think it's illegal. I would certainly hope not, but I would think it's something that would justify your removal from a private venue. In the event that enough witnesses can attest to your guilt, I'm guessing this is the case and always has been the case, but it turns out it's not good enough when it happens to women. If a male team sucks, they get shit thrown at them. You figure out who chucked the shit and you throw them out. Simple as. But if a female team sucks, and let's face it, they all do, it's not good enough to punish the people who suck. We need safety nets to prevent the people from even doing it. And ain't that the nutshell? When women are in charge, disapproval will not be tolerated. It won't even be expressed. We will go out of our way to prevent any disapproval being expressed in the first place, because there is no conceivable reason that anyone would ever complain about women. It must be misogyny when anyone complains about women for any reason. You think these women suck at sports? Well, that's not possible. You just hate women. You think rebooting old franchises by casting women instead of men is a silly idea? Well, that's not possible. You just hate women. Replacing men with women is a brilliant idea. I'll have you know. Subsidizing women by stealing from men is a brilliant idea. How could you possibly say it isn't unless you're some kind of misogynist? replacing our own men with men from the third world is a brilliant idea. How could you possibly say it isn't, unless you're some kind of racist? And that's how we got here, ladies and gentlemen. This is your weekly reminder that the reason your culture is collapsing and being taken over by other cultures is because you left women in charge of it. And women, by and large, are more obsessed with what their husbands said to them 5 years ago than what a world leader said to them 5 minutes ago. Putting women in charge will give you relational aggression in a domestic environment. That's par for the course. A domestic environment must hold itself to high standards, regulated within itself. But a national environment must hold other nations to high standards, regulated internationally. We cannot let them trample on us. This is not what this story is about, but I'm going there anyway, because I don't give much of a fuck about dildos being thrown onto a basketball court. To me, it seems like a joke, like something that could potentially harm people, but functionally does not. I mean, they even have the decency to throw dildos with neon colors, so at least they're peripherally visible against the wood brown motif of a basketball court. If they were throwing wood brown colored dildos, I'd be like, all right, that seems malicious, like they're trying to present trip hazards. But if it's bright green or bright purple, and well, it's like, okay, cool, but at least it's obviously about sending a message rather than endangering anyone. By the way, is it a coincidence that they're green and purple? A lot of you Zoomers won't get the reference, but bright green and bright purple were the official colors of Gamergate, and it goes back even further than that. There's a place called 4chan, and
well, there was.
There was. And, I don't have time to get into it. Please do look it up and browse the content at your leisure. I just think it's funny. I like to think there's something mystical about the combination of purple and green. It's so obviously ugly. The punk revolution was famously adorned with neon colors too, even pink and yellow.
Yep.
And that electric blue that's so ubiquitous now. But the Gamergate revolution had to make itself distinct from the rainbow, the gay rainbow, which culturally appropriated all the neon colors and turned it into their flag. But they would never dream of using green and purple, because green and purple are so complementary that they're not even complementary. They look awful together. Imagine a bathroom where the walls are purple and the bath is green and the toilet is green. It would be so aesthetically offensive that you would eventually start hallucinating or something. And yeah, that's where we're at. We've been subjected to political contradictions for so long. We've been subjected to impossible hypocrisy for so long. The flag we have to wave in distress is not just upside down, it's purple and green. It's surely a universal sign of distress. There are no national flags that are made of purple and green. Well, funnily enough,
Kyrgyzstan?
There are no national flags featuring purple. There's only 3, I think, and they're all just a small part of an emblem of a coat of arms or something. Of all the flags in the world, even the ones that are just 3 colors, no one has ever used purple as one of those colors. Purple, for whatever reason, is not a sign of pride. It's a sign of distress. When they throw the green dildos, it's all in good fun. But when they throw the purple dildos, shit just got real. Remember that.
Yeah.
Remember how much sense it makes. All the shit I've just been saying. I know it just sounds random, and it is. Random is my middle name, but remember, it is random because I'm just talking stupid shit to entertain you. Remember that. Remember everything. Or don't. I don't even remember what I just said. Good night, everyone. I'm going for a cigarette. Ugh.
Well, while you go for a cigarette, I'm going to point out something else. Right? This turned out to be like this big fury over this was amazing. That the thing that um, sort of fuels the desire to do these types of pranks was done in great amounts. This was covered by all kinds of news agencies. There was a big deal made of this. This was the people who did it got all kinds of attention, and the arrest that occurred and everything. I bet they got people that had only ever thrown one, and there were other people that didn't get caught. But it's this story is told as if this was something that has never been done before. This kind of thing has never happened before, and it's only being done because the WNBA is women and they don't respect the women, and it's about going after the women. How dare they? But there have been disruptions at NBA games that have made the news over time for years and years and years. I remember years ago there was a big fight on the court at one point that disrupted the game. But in more recent years, there was a player that got spat on, and I think that one they made a bit of a racial thing out of it. But not it didn't hit hard enough to get a lot of people's attention. But objects like Mike said, objects get thrown on the court all the time, just not necessarily dildos, but there have been full water bottles thrown at players. So it's not so much a prank as it is an attack. If you have somebody throw a water bottle from up in the stands and it hits somebody in the head, it can actually give them a concussion. There have been popcorn dumped out there and candy dumped out there, things that have to be, the game has to be stopped and they have to clean it up. A lot of lewd remarks, racial slurs, all kinds of stuff. There have been fans that have been banned for yelling like all kinds of nasty things at players, sexually explicit things, all kinds of stuff like that. There have been streakers, and the practice of streaking at athletic events is so long standing and so well known. There is a song about it called "The Streak," and I believe the setting in the song is a basketball game. Probably not a NBA game, but in any case, like these kind of things, even though they're stupid, and the people who do them are definitely, society not sending its best. It's not unique at all that this happened to the women, and that's one of the reasons that I put this in our chat. It's funny, obviously, throwing dildos on the court, but the upset over it, treating it as though it's different this time, it's special this time, it's unique this time. No, it's not. It's pretty much par for the course, and it's just another example of an environment that when something is over the top, it's over the top toward men in a masculine way, and it's dealt with in a masculine way, and then and the men involved move on. As soon as you get women into that environment, it becomes a whole different thing, whole different ball game, so to speak. And now that it's treated like it's a gender-based attack, when in fact, it's not. Hell, in just a couple of years ago, there was an incident that I remember being reported where some animal rights group glued their hands to the court at a game, chained themselves to the baskets, ran out onto the court, were very disruptive. They had to get them out of there in order to have the game. And even that, like, that was much more disruptive than this. It didn't involve stopping the game for a couple seconds to get the offending device off of the court. There was a great deal more that had to be done to deal with these people. And it wasn't not as big of a deal was made out of that. They weren't even as widely condemned, and they got their issue talked about, right? So yeah, this is a women can't take what men are expected to take. Women can't handle what men are expected to handle situation, and frankly, I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I mean, again, I just thought it was, funny, obviously, and
Yeah.
a bit preposterous. And, Mike made the Gamergate reference that I intended on making, but it's just like disrespect to Vivian. She's just a woman, just like you guys. She deserves acknowledgement, recognition as well. But, yeah, I mean, let me know what you guys think about this one in the comments. I just thought it was funny. So not really all that offended, but whatever. They're what's gonna happen. They're gonna make a big fuss out of it and all that, and hopefully we'll just move on. So, all right. Anyway, that's all the stories I got for you guys. So we're gonna go into the patron show now. We're gonna talk about this article. The Lord of the Rings movies have aged poorly. I'm sure it's gonna be a very productive discussion. And there won't be anything cringe in it that will cause us to want to shoot ourselves, but we'll see. So anyway, thanks guys for coming on the show. And thank you to Mike and Hannah for helping me out with talking about these topics. And yeah, we'll talk to you guys in the next one. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And see you guys next Tuesday.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.